You're listening to Beyond Bitcoin. It's the 4th of December. I'm Arthur Falls, and this is, of course, not investment advice. Please excuse my unusually husky baritone. I hitchhiked 1,000 kilometers yesterday, some of which was in the hail, coming back from the Bitcoin South conference, which was absolutely amazing. Met all kinds of interesting people, and hopefully some of them will be appearing on the show before too long. Austrian economics is one of those impenetrable black boxes that you hear referenced occasionally, but that has very little meaning for many people. Recently, I was perusing Cameron Harwick's blog, Thricker, where I periodically go to soak up some free market goodness, and I found myself rereading a post entitled Hayek versus Rothbard on free market money. The article and the comments elucidate many interesting and relevant ideas that can not only help us understand cryptocurrency, but also show that the problem of discovering what is good money has been mulled over by brilliant people long before the cypherpunks sunk their teeth into it. A clearly novel approach has been taken by the team working on BitShares. I asked Daniel Larimer to explain the roots of his idea and update us on the progress of the platform.
How can I help today?
I know this is something you've been through a million times, and I'm going to ask you to do it again. Could you give us a good rundown of what exactly the BitAsset concept is?
The BitAsset concept is the idea of a digital asset that has the value of any other asset, whether it's dollars, gold, silver. The thing that makes it digital is that it doesn't depend upon dollars, gold, or silver being stored in a vault anywhere, and it doesn't depend on trusting any third party to redeem an IOU for these things. So in a way, a bit asset has all the properties of Bitcoin with the price stability of whatever asset they are tracking, be it dollars, gold, or silver. So you can imagine they'd be incredibly useful. And in our case, BitAssets also pay you a yield, a non-zero variable interest rate, if you will, that the longer you hold it, the more return you get. This yield is directly proportional to the expected growth in the underlying system. For example, for BitShares, it would be the expected growth of BitShares of, say, 100% a year is going to cause there to be a higher yield on BitAssets backed by BitShares. And that has to do with how the BitAssets come into existence. So we can explain how BitAssets are created relatively easily. If two people get together and they live in a country where gold is illegal, they're not allowed to own gold, but they happen to know what the price of gold is on a foreign exchange. They can both put their money into a hat and agree to one person gets the value of gold in the future, and the other person gets whatever's left over. Time passes, the price changes, and one party or the other makes or loses money based upon the direction the price of gold moved. And this is being referred to as a contract for difference. And it's used in many different places around the world. It is not a new concept. So it can also be viewed as an insurance policy where one party is guaranteeing another party the purchasing power of a dollar, and the other party gets the leverage. If the dollar goes down, they make money. If it goes up, they lose money.
And so the long position in this case, the position held by the person who is going to take away from the hat the value of the dollar at a future date,
right?
That person winds up with a cryptographic token representing that long position which they can trade elsewhere. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's a divisible, fungible cryptographic token.
And you mentioned that there's interest that's paid to the BitAsset holders.
Yes.
What's the purpose of introducing that interest to the system?
There is a large demand of people who want to take the opposite side of the bet. Those who want to bet the dollar is going to go down. And if the dollar goes down, they'll make money. We need a way of prioritizing or sorting these people, so we sort them based on price. We want to motivate them to provide liquidity, so they have to buy back and close out their short position by buying back the BitUSD from the long. And when we use long and short here, short is it's like you got the short end of the stick. You don't have enough. You need to go onto the market and buy it. Long means that you have it. You have more. You don't have any liabilities. So when we say long, we mean you hold the asset without any liabilities. When we say short, that means you've borrowed, you've got a debt, and you've got to repay it. So conceptually speaking, a short is nothing more than someone who takes out a loan and is required to repay it in the future. And so we know why interest exists on loans, and it exists on shorts for the same reason. So it's actually very similar to a bank. BitUSD gets interest because other people are borrowing the BitUSD in order to go short.
You mentioned use cases for BitAssets. What were the use cases you imagined for BitAssets when you conceived of them?
As a replacement for centralized exchanges. If you wanted to create an exchange that traded dollars versus Bitcoin, but you didn't want to worry about the government confiscating the dollar reserves of the exchange, then you would use BitUSD as your dollar equivalent asset, and you trade it against BTC as your Bitcoin equivalent asset.
Or thus insulating the source of value from being confiscated.
Correct. Because the collateral of BitAssets is a cryptocurrency, which is not a liability and has a value set on the market, just like Bitcoin. Your collateral is good, therefore the derivative, the BitUSD, is good.
You've answered one of part of the next question I'm going to ask. With reference to current mediums of exchange, what problems do BitAssets solve?
Well, I've always said that the best money is that which can move value through time and space most effectively with the least losses. Gold is very good at moving value through time. It's not so good at moving value through space. Bitcoin, and now BitShares, is very good at moving value through space. It's all digital. But because of the volatility, it's not very good at holding value through time. BitAssets, such as BitGold, would give you the ability to move the value of gold through space instantly, while having the price stability of gold to move it through time in a stable manner as well. This makes it the best overall medium of exchange, as long as the system itself remains functional.
Could you outline some of the ideas that inspired the BitAsset concept?
There were many ideas that inspired it. It's kind of evolved, but I would say that prediction markets were a big part of understanding it. The Bitcoin concept, the digital currency, is as a a source of value that's completely digital, that has no counterparty, is critical to the bid asset concept. The concept of banks that lend dollars into existence backed by collateral. All the dollars that circulate today are created when you go to the bank to borrow money to buy a house. The house is the collateral, the dollars are created backed by that collateral. So in reality, all we've done is replace the house with shares in the bank. Shares in the bank are more liquid and fungible. Therefore, they're actually a far better collateral than a house is. As long as the bank is very conservative in how it operates, which with BitShares, we take great pains to make sure that it is incredibly conservative, requiring 3x initial collateral covering if the price falls by only 33%. It's a very safe system by comparison to all the existing banks out there. So we really borrow from ideas across the board, everything from contract for difference to prediction markets to mortgages and Bitcoin. And just the synthesis of those ideas creates BitAssets.
Is this comparable to fractional reserve banking?
I would say it's more like 300% reserve banking. Under fractional reserve banking, you've got 1 ounce of gold backing 10 gold IOUs. So you've only got 10% of the collateral. If there is a bank run, your collateral for your loan is only able to make people 10% whole. Under BitShares, if there is a run on BitUSD, everyone tries to redeem it at once, they can. There's 300% reserve.
What would the effect on the price of the underlying asset, BitShares, be if there were to be a bank run on BitUSD?
Well, let's address that because that's a complex question. A bank run on BitUSD is really a bank run on the share price of the collateral. As long as the collateral is held to be valid, then there's no reason to run on the bank. It's entirely transparent. So you're not going to get the bank run mechanics of people trying to redeem their BitUSD like you would people trying to turn in their dollars to get their gold. But if the share price falls, because there's a massive sell-off, then the effect is the same as any bank run, complete bankruptcy, or what used to happen and still does happen many times. Depositors end up with equity. Creditors, people who the bank owes money, get equity instead of in lieu of paying off the debt. So BitUSD holders get converted to BitShares holders, and the worst case valuation for the BitUSD holder is the valuation of the collateral,
which is 3 times its original value.
Initially, it's 3 times. Its collateral falls in value by 6 times, and does so instantly. Then you'll end up with 50% of $1, 50 cents on the dollar, value-wise. So you can't just compare prices; you have to look at value. So you start out with a lot of room. Like the collateral has to fall 66% very quickly. Falling 66% over a week, not a problem. We're talking, Black Swan falls 66% in a day. Those are the type of events that can cause your BitUSD to be worth only what the collateral is worth. So
it's unfair of me to ask you to predict what or to suggest what some of these Black Swan events might be, but have you thought about what kind of Black Swan event might result in a catastrophic collapse in value like that?
A irreversible hack of the protocol, same kind of things that could cause Bitcoin to fall like that.
Mm-hmm.
A reversible hack would probably not result in that. It'd get fixed with a hard fork, and everyone would continue on their day. a complete government shutdown of all the exchanges, sudden, could cause a massive run. Although I believe a lot of people, most of these black swan events are only likely during the infancy of a system. Once you get to the size of Bitcoin, it's very unlikely that you'll see massive disruptions that cause the price of Bitcoin to fall rapidly. I can see it falling gradually to zero over 10 years, but that's not a problem. It's only the sudden falls, and there are very few things that can cause a massive revaluation of an existing technology. But perhaps something like a Google, Apple, Microsoft teaming up to launch a cryptocurrency could cause everything in the Bitcoin space to go down. On the other hand, such legitimacy being added to the field could cause everything to go up. So who knows?
Do you see monetary systems like BitAssets foreshadowed in the work of any economic theorists?
Oh, wow, that's a deep question. I would say that foreshadowed, if you know what you were looking for, it's really been around for hundreds of years. You know, a mortgage, an IOU system, collateralized debt has been used as money this whole time. Shares in companies has been used as money. You have digital bearer bonds. Right? That's what Bitcoin is. It's a digital bearer bond. It's a hybrid between registered shares and bearer shares. You have this global ledger, but the owners are anonymous. Those concepts have been around. Lending using stock as collateral has probably existed for a very long time. But if you want to get to a very high level, I'd say that the recognition that all value is perceived value, that shares in a system can have value, are well accepted economic principles that have been around in the Mises Austrian school for a very long time. So that is the foundation upon which this is built.
Mises proposed several categories into which what we think of broadly as money might be divided. A medium of exchange, a money, and also money substitute. Do BitAssets fit into any one of these categories?
Well, let's define some of those categories in greater detail, because they can be used as medium exchange. Medium exchange, money, and money substitute is what you said. So here he's inferring that gold is money. A IOU gold is a money substitute, and a medium of exchange is a currency like the dollar, maybe. And in some sense, if gold is money, BitGold is a money substitute. However, it's backed by a collateral, which is not an IOU, so that could also be viewed as money. So is BitUSD a money substitute? I think it's all the above, depending on which angle you take.
It's a contractual right to something, isn't it?
No, it's not.
No?
Nope. We are very adamant that the key differentiating factor between BitShares and cryptocurrencies and all the existing financial systems is that there are no contractual obligations. No one has the power to compel you to do anything in the future. You can't necessarily prevent things from happening, like margin calls, but you can't even make it happen, right? So no one's contractually obligated to behave in any particular way, and yet everyone does behave in such a way that has the effect as if there were contracts. And that's the key distinction. There's no one you can sue to compel to behave a certain way. There's no one who can die and leave a contract unfulfilled.
Do BitAssets run afoul of Mises' regression theorem? And if not, why not?
His regression theorem that something has to have value in the market for some practical purpose before it can be evolved into money. All right, so it's just, not everyone is familiar with the regression theorem. So gold and silver have value for their electrical and jewelry properties. And then because they already have that value, they can start to be used with trade, and eventually they become money. The definition I use for money is the most marketable commodity, that which is easiest to sell, that you can sell with very little marketing cost, that everyone wants to buy, right? Money is easy to sell. So if you view money as a good and gold and silver as a good, how easy is it for you to sell and get full price? If you buy a computer and then resell it, there's going to be a big loss in purchasing power, even if you just bought it for one person and turn around and sell it to another. But money doesn't have that property. So does BitUSD violate that? Well, let's ask a question. Do shares in a company represent a form of value that has value in and of itself? Well, if the company is profitable, yes, it's an asset. It can trade. It represents a stake in a revenue stream. That is something that can exist independently of being money. BitUSD is a derivative on such an asset, and it exists whether or not BitUSD is used as money. Why does it exist? Because people want to hedge. Traders want to use it. So it has value independent of its use as money. If BitUSD becomes used globally in all transactions, then it becomes very liquid and is as good as real USD. And it becomes money in itself. So I would suggest that it does indeed pass the regression theorem.
So what really separates BitUSD or BitAssets in general as a potential form of money from other cryptocurrencies is that where other cryptocurrencies rely on a belief that in the future they will be accepted as money by another party, the BitAssets derive their value extrinsically.
Sort of, yes. BitAssets derive their money from the expectation that there's value today, or into the BitAssets themselves are independent. The collateral that they're based off of depends on expectation that people want to use the services of a virtual business to perform transactions, smart contracts, or just for the very purpose of creating the BitAssets to begin with. So BitAssets work at any scale. You can have BitAssets at a market cap of 40 million for the underlying collateral, and it can continue to work all the way up to the scale of Bitcoin, 4 billion. So whether you're in the millions or billions, BitAssets don't care. They will continue to function. And that's the main thing that makes them more useful as a currency, because it doesn't matter how big BitShares is. A merchant can accept BitUSD and use BitUSD, and anyone who wants to use it, they can use it in their own little community. Whereas with Bitcoin, the volatility means that it needs to get big before it can be useful as a currency, and even then, it's not very useful because it's like a stock.
The relationship between BitAssets and BitShares is something new that we're beginning to see emerge from what, for want of a better word, I guess we could call the altcoin space. And that is this idea of separating stake in a system from the medium of exchange, or the token used as a medium of exchange. How do you think this is going to evolve moving forward?
I like to use the analogy of a bank again. A bank has shares in the bank that are owned by a completely different set of users than the depositors in the bank. There may be millions and millions of depositors and probably only tens of thousands of shareholders. And that's because they have different risk appetites. They have different knowledge requirements, different use cases. So if you view a blockchain as a service-based company, a transactional service, it makes a lot of sense that there should be a separation between those who want to cut in the underlying service and those who want to use the service.
By separating those two, the unit of exchange is insulated from the volatility of the value of the service. Yeah.
Yes. Which in turn makes the value of the service higher.
Could you describe some of the differences between the world we live in now and a world using a medium of exchange with the characteristics of BitAssets?
I would expect that in a future world, gold and silver will be the physical representation of money. BitAssets will be the digital representation of money. And there will be no paper representation of money. The average person will save with BitAssets because at the very least they can earn some interest on their gold and silver. Where else can you earn interest on gold and silver except BitGold and BitSilver? So that's what I see the world evolving to.
Hayek and some of these other guys often talk about this, a free market for money. Specifically, let's see, the monopoly of government-issued money has not only deprived us of good money, but has also deprived us of the only process by which we can find out what would be good money. How do you see BitShares and BitAssets fitting into that framework, or how do you relate BitAssets to that quote from Hayek?
Well, what's the process for discovering good money? And I would agree fundamentally that the market is at all times supreme. Even today, even with government intervention, the government is nothing but a market force, a violent entity that the free market has to work around. Companies have to weigh the cost of complying versus rebelling, and they take the most economical approach. So I've always had the goal, well, not always, but for the past 10 years or so of my life, I've aimed to create free market solutions to secure the life, liberty, and property of all. What I mean by this is that the free market is ultimately the only way that we will have freedom through voluntary exchange in commerce. So BitShares and BitAssets provide a way to opt out in an entirely voluntary process that depends only on freedom of speech. If you have freedom of speech to broadcast and to coordinate both prices and transactions, then BitAssets can work, and you can have an alternative economy and an alternative economic system that you can opt into. And in such a way, the forces of the government-mandated money, can be worked around. Many people don't realize this, but dollars aren't required. You can use anything you like as money, even in the United States. The problem is people. The average individual is not interested in thinking in terms of anything but dollars. They price everything in dollars. They know how much they're going to be paid is in dollars. Their expenses are in dollars. BitAssets gives us a bridge. The opportunity for individuals to move into a digital dollar domain without having to rely on the infrastructure of the current government systems.
Hello, I'm Matt608 and I'm campaigning to be elected as a marketing delegate for BitShares. I'll be focusing on bringing BitUSD to the Argentine market where it is needed most, giving people access to a stable currency through a safe and bank-free solution. I'll be developing a custom BitUSD portal for Spanish speakers and launching an advertising campaign to promote the portal. To view the rest of my campaign details, visit bitsharestalk.org and look in the delegate subforum. My delegate is called Argentina-marketing.mat608. Please vote for me if you support my campaign. Thank you.
When did all of this start for you? You said this started 10 years ago. How did you basically find yourself on the path that led you to start Invictus and produce BitShares?
Well, it's been a long path. I'm a software engineer. I've been doing software development since I was in middle school. And shortly after I graduated college, I started a business. And I was fed up with politics. I was convinced the Republicans were right and the Democrats were wrong, because that's how I was brought up. And I set out to create a site that would help everyone in the entire world prove it. But in order for me to do that, I had to rigorously investigate everything myself. And that started me down the rabbit hole, if you will. I discovered Ron Paul, Austrian economics, libertarian philosophy, and the more I learned, I realized what I thought was right before was completely wrong. And it's been a very enlightening experience. So, I guess about 2008, 2009 timeframe, I was trying to come up with an alternative to money. I recognized that money was a key to the control. And if we could have an alternative money that they couldn't control, then we could have a chance at freedom. That's when I Googled digital money, virtual money, and discovered Bitcoin. I was trying to invent Bitcoin, and look, it was already invented. So my first thought was, well, this can be used for digital warehouse receipts, and I started getting involved, but Bitcoin was trading at pennies, and you couldn't make a career out of it at that point in time, and I had bills to pay. But a couple of years later, I noticed the Bitcoin price went through the roof, and I saw my $20 worth of Bitcoin turn into thousands of dollars worth of Bitcoin. And then I noticed that Mt. Gox had their funds seized, and that Bitcoin was still vulnerable to the government seizing the bank accounts of all the exchanges, which set me on a mission to solve the decentralized exchange problem. And that brought me to BitShares. I evolved it over the course of a month and got to where we are today.
I know we've spoken a lot about the hurdles that you've run into with BitShares in a prior interview. Things like how it didn't really work with mining and led you to develop delegated proof of stake and all of these things. What hurdles do you see in the future for BitShares? And I guess also for all cryptocurrencies?
The biggest hurdle in the future is going to be scalability. Scaling up these systems to support tens of thousands of transactions per second, which requires hundreds of megabytes per second bandwidth to coordinate on a global scale. Doesn't matter the protocol. Just look at number of transactions times average size of transaction. It's going to be a major challenge to scale these systems up. So I'd say that's the main hurdle. The other hurdle is regulatory. And it can cryptocurrencies and systems like BitShares be relegated to the black market by having all the on and off ramps either criminalized or regulated to the point that the utility of the BitAssets is no different than the utility of a bank account. We'll see. But I'd say that regulation and scalability are the two big issues in the future.
What about adoption? I mean, at the moment, we're really not seeing that adoption curve that everyone's been hoping for. Or that's often referred to as the reason for the lack of enthusiasm in the marketplace for Bitcoin, is this kind of undelivered upon promise of adoption.
Bitcoin's adoption problem is impacted because it doesn't actually provide utility to non-believers, if you will. Bitcoin was adopted by those who wanted an alternative money, wanted to create a free market where people would buy and sell and trade and price things in Bitcoin. And what we've seen instead is that merchants are willing to accept people's Bitcoin just to dump them on the market and convert them to dollars. Because Bitcoin is expensive to buy, expensive to use, and expensive to spend, right? You buy it, you pay a spread. You spend it, you pay a spread. And while you hold it, your risk of volatility. Means that only speculators are really interested in holding Bitcoin. And that all trade, Bitcoin is unable to produce a self-sustaining micro economy. But I believe BitShares with BitUSD and BitGold and BitSilver are different because merchants can use BitUSD, hold their accounts in BitUSD. Users can buy and save and earn interest on BitUSD. It's a lot easier for people to keep their money inside the system and work inside the system. You don't have to constantly enter and exit the system. And that's a huge difference in terms of long-term adoption. It's much easier to explain to your parents and grandparents that they should put their money in a virtual banking platform that it's still dollars. They put dollars in, hold it for a year, and at the end of the year they get dollars plus interest out. That's much easier for adoption than put money in at the end of the year. You might have 10x gain or you might have 90% loss. And that's going to dramatically affect the adoption of these systems.
How is it going with BitAssets right now? I know that I've been watching it really closely, and I've noticed, and you guys did start off with price feeds from delegates to maintain the market price within a certain window, and I did notice that the value of the BitAssets were quite mobile within that window. How have things been going recently?
Well, our daily volume is on the order of $10,000 to $20,000, and the price at all times seems to be within 5% of the actual price. There's about $1 million worth of BitUSD that's currently circulating or being held. And I would say that is a success. That $1 million out of a $40 million market cap is a relatively large percent of the value of BitShares being held in BitAssets. We've evolved this over several months from entirely no restrictions to more restrictions around the price feed. We've increased the collateral requirements, we've added interest, and we added mandatory covering. After 30 days, all people that are short BitUSD must buy it back on the market. So you're guaranteed to be able to get $1 worth of BitShares out within 30 days of your purchase of the BitUSD. And therefore, the spread you see is the time preference. If you want out now, you're going to pay a slight discount or a slight premium to sell your BitUSD today, and someone else will hold it for the rest of the 30 days in order to get the full amount out. So it's no different than any other market, any other bond. It's got a 30-day maturity. At the end of 30 days, you get the full price. Before then, it's less than that. Now, that 30 days is average, and as the system matures and volume increases, the turnover rate is going to be much higher because every single day there's going to be 1/30th of the BitUSD supply that has to turn over. So if there's $1 million worth of BitUSD in circulation, then each and every day, $33,000 has to cover. And as long as you're selling less than $33,000 a day, on average, you should be able to get it full price. If you need to sell more than that, you'll have to pay some premium proportional to the amount of the BitUSD supply you want to gain. You want to redeem immediately. But I suspect most people will own less than 1/30th of the BitUSD supply, and therefore for most people the liquidity will be very high as the system matures and as we get more traders in the system.
When you said there's $1 million in BitUSD, so the collateral underlying that is $3 million, or $3 million worth of BitShares, correct?
Yes, approximately.
You know, I hesitate to use the word money supply because we're really dealing with something that is not money. That's the division between the unit of exchange and the unit of stake, is that BitShares is not a currency like we imagine cryptocurrencies being. It's actually a unit of stake in a system. And so it actually derives value from being locked away in the form of collateral for the BitAssets, and that is where it derives scarcity.
Yes. The supply of BitShares is relatively limited. It's treated like a company. It grows only at the approval of the stakeholders and at a rate that is less than Bitcoin's rate of growth. And when it does grow, it's used to fund development and produce more value for all the stakeholders.
The BitShares platform has been really dynamic recently. There have been a ton of changes surrounding how it's been developing and the ecosystem as well, the BitShares ecosystem as a whole. Could you explain what some of those changes have been and how they have changed the original vision for BitShares?
BitShares has been evolving in an attempt to produce the most value possible for everyone involved. The initial idea is that it all be mined. We abandoned that when we realized that mining just sent power and money to the electric companies. So we switched to proof of stake and a virtual mining process for a fundraiser. And that allowed us to get to where we are today. But our plan had been 2 billion fixed share supply, strictly decreasing, and multiple competing chains implementing different features. That's how we were going to scale. But we always try to adapt as we learn. And what we learned is that competing chains divide developer resources, divide network effect, and ultimately they all want to incorporate features of the other. So I would say that we recognize that our system would be better as one, where the developer time is not divided among multiple projects. The network effect is not divided among multiple users. Right? If you have 10 projects with 10 users, the sum of the value of the projects is going to be less than one project with 100 users. It's just the way network effect works. So we rebranded BitShares X, DNS, Vote, all into just one platform called BitShares. We increased the share supply with by 20% to bring in all the other stakeholders under one roof. And once we did that, we were able to gain lots of advantages. We now have more developers focused on growing BitShares. We added the ability for the delegates to get paid at today's market cap, about $2,500 a month per delegate, to fund projects, whether it's BitShares blocks or new web wallets, marketing campaigns, core features on the dev team. We basically created a perpetual funding solution for BitShares. And that is going to give BitShares a competitive advantage over all the other projects. If you look at Next, they've got a fixed currency supply and no ability to fund development except donations. They're in the same boat as Bitcoin. If you look at Ripple, they've got to raise funds through VCs, and they're highly centralized. If you look at Ethereum, they haven't released yet, but I am not aware of any plans they have at this point in time to allow stakeholders to vote on future funding. So they've got a large initial budget of $5 to $10 million, depending on the Bitcoin price, and that they'll have to spend that money when it's gone. It's gone. So we've really solved some real critical issues about the long-term sustainability with BitShares, and I think that's going to make all the difference in the world compared to the competitors.
So the funds that are being made available to delegates, they're in the form of a monthly dilution or a per block dilution. Pardon me.
Yeah, it's a block reward. So delegates are elected. They have to have the highest approval of the shareholders, stakeholders, and the top 101 can get paid the salary, a percent of the maximum pay. So most of the development team has the delegate campaigns going where they're asking for 100% pay. Once the market cap rises, they'll probably ask for a fractional pay and reduce their pay rate. But for now, we have the ability to fund development, and that's making all the difference.
Didn't you guys recently return some of the angel share funds?
Yes, we returned all the BitShares PTS that was given to us. We returned it.
Why was that?
We decided that it was to our advantage to give it back. The donation was more harmful than good.
Really? Could you explain that decision in a little bit greater depth?
It's mostly has to do with accounting, and that's all I can say about that.
This is actually, it's really cool that you've managed to use the system that you've built to actually fund the development of the platform as well, that you've managed to use the system to pay your own development team. It's incredible. You run a delegate as well?
I don't at this point in time, but I will probably be running a delegate within the month.
Do you think it'll get voted in?
I don't think I'd have any trouble getting it voted in.
Good. Well, good luck to you.
It's the first time a developer works for the program they created.
Yeah. It's really cool. This is really the DAC. This is really the DAC concept emerging as a functional thing. I hadn't really thought about how you guys could. It's obvious now. I hadn't thought about you guys running your own delegates and just being shoo-ins for election at full pay, because how else are you going to fund development of the platform? It's really it's awesome.
Yeah, it's great. It means it's actually independent. It's no longer any risk of it being a crowd sale. Yeah, it exists with or without us. If something were to happen to me, my delegate would get voted out and someone else would get voted in. You don't have to trust anyone to hold a large development fund. You don't have to worry about multi-sig accounts and politics around how that money is spent. You just have to deal with the politics of getting elected. But the owners and the user community out there is in control. And some developers, like Nikolai, also known as Toast in the forum, have been elected entirely by community support without any help of large insiders. So we have broad community support for the development team and the dilution process.
This is really the evolution of that concept where, the developer works for the distributed or digital autonomous corporation, digital autonomous organization, however you like to frame it.
Yeah, it's distributed. It's not decentralized. Decentralized means all kinds of different things. It's really more of a distributed system. There is no central point, but distributed is more defined. It's a positive term rather than decentralized is sort of a negative, not centralized. So I like distributed better for that. It's automated, not autonomous. A lot of the processes of the system work without having users to do a whole lot, but it's not fully autonomous. It has no decision-making capability. That is in the hands of the users of the system. They are the decision makers. So it's a distributed, automated company or community.
Country,
cooperative, depending upon which metaphor you want to use for the C. They all apply in their own right.
Yeah, it's, congratulations, man, because it's only just become, this has been so opaque for even myself. I've followed this forever. And it's not until I actually started digging into some of the Austrian thinkers that I got the concept of BitAssets. And then it all kind of clicked together. And I'm hoping that this interview can elucidate it for other people, in the same way that it has for me.
I hope you can get the message out. That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, one more thing. Could you sum up what's taking place in the marketing segment?
Marketing has its own life. There's several different marketing efforts going on. The community has their self-organized system. We just had a complete rebranding that was in a large part at the request of the marketing to simplify our message. We just launched a new website with a simplified message, and now we're filling in the details with white papers. I'm going to be doing talks like this and interviews like this, video blogs, to describe the philosophy and the potential of what this system can be. And that's going to be marketed and directed toward those user communities, everyone from Alex Jones to Lou Rockwell to all the YouTube videos about conspiracy theories and anti-banking. Everyone who wants change in the world, who's got a libertarian bent, is going to be directed toward our philosophy and to be encouraged to join as an early adopter. We're not going to be marketing this to the masses until we've got lightweight clients with clear messaging and lots of supporting infrastructure and lots of stability. So in the short term, we are going to be performing an aggressive campaign to get the philosophy out there, to let people find out about BitShares, about me, what I stand for, and the potential it has for the future of a free world.
Check out bitshares.org for more. They have a wiki and forum, links to both of which will be in the notes. Thank you, Matt, for the visionary sponsorship and for producing a great ad. Thanks to Cameron Harwick for his informative blog, Thricker, and also Cesis for the music. And of course, a big thank you to Dan as well. All links will be in the notes. For the Let's Talk Bitcoin community, today's magic word is Argentina-marketing.mat608. I'm not going to spell it out, just copy and paste it from the notes. If you guys want to reach out, by all means, contact me at beyondbitcoinshow@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.